When two F-16 Fighting Falcon pilots received orders to escort an A-10 Warthog back to base, they expected routine procedure. What they didn't expect was to recognize a tail number that would send chills down their spines and force them to confront a legend they thought was dead. The woman flying that battle-scarred Warthog wasn't just any pilot. She was the ghost of Operation Desert Storm, the ace who had vanished into classified files, and the reason enemy forces still whispered warnings in the desert night. Her aircraft bore scars from battles that officially never happened, and her call sign struck fear into the hearts of those who knew what it really meant. This is the true story of Captain Sarah Reaper Martinez, the pilot who refused to stay dead, and the day her past caught up with her present in the most dangerous way possible. When command ordered her Warthog down, they had no idea they were about to unleash a storm that would shake the very foundations of military protocol and reveal secrets that three governments had spent decades trying to bury. The F-16 pilots thought they were escorting a rogue aircraft. They had no idea they were about to meet a legend. The morning sun blazed across the Nevada desert as Captain Jake Sullivan adjusted his helmet and ran through final checks in his F-16C Fighting Falcon. Beside him, his wingman Captain Lisa Chen completed her own preparations. Both pilots had logged thousands of hours between them, but today felt different. The mission briefing had been unusually sparse, and their commanding officer's expression had carried an edge they rarely saw. Viper 1 and 2, you are cleared for takeoff, the tower crackled through their headsets. Proceed to coordinates 379er Delta. Intercept and escort unidentified aircraft back to Nellis Air Force Base. Rules of engagement are defensive only unless hostile intent is displayed. Sullivan pushed his throttle forward, feeling the familiar surge of power as his aircraft rolled down the runway. Within seconds, both F-16s were airborne, climbing rapidly into the crystal-clear Nevada sky. The desert stretched endlessly below them, a landscape that had witnessed countless training exercises and classified missions over the decades. "Control, this is Viper 1, Sullivan radioed once they reached cruising altitude. Can you provide more details on this bogey? Type of aircraft? Reason for intercept?" There was a pause that lasted longer than usual. Viper 1, target is an A-10 Thunderbolt II, call sign unknown. Aircraft has been operating in restricted airspace without proper authorization. Your orders are to establish visual contact and guide the aircraft to Nellis for debriefing. Chen's voice came through the radio. "That's unusual, Jake. A-10s don't typically operate in this sector, and why would one of our own birds need an armed escort?" Sullivan shared her confusion. The A-10 Warthog was beloved by ground troops and respected by pilots, but it wasn't known for high-altitude operations or unauthorized flights. Something about this mission didn't add up, but orders were orders. 20 minutes into their flight, Chen spotted the target first. Contact, 2 o'clock low. Single A-10, approximately 15,000 feet. Sullivan banked his fighter to get a better view. The Warthog flew with steady purpose, its distinctive twin engines and straight wings unmistakable against the desert backdrop. But, as they drew closer, Sullivan began to notice details that made his blood run cold. The aircraft was battle-scarred in ways that suggested combat far more recent and intense than any training exercise. Bullet holes peppered the fuselage, and scorch marks told stories of close calls with anti-aircraft fire. Most unsettling of all, the paint scheme was wrong. This wasn't the standard gray of modern Air Force aircraft, but the desert camouflage pattern that hadn't been used in over 2 decades. "Viper 2, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Sullivan asked, his voice tight with concern. "Copy that, Jake. This bird looks like it flew straight out of Desert Storm. Look at those battle scars." As they maneuvered closer to establish radio contact, Sullivan caught sight of the tail number. His heart nearly stopped. 77992. He knew that number from squadron folklore, from stories told in hushed tones by veteran pilots who'd served in the Gulf War. "Unknown A-10, this is Viper 1 of the United States Air Force. You are flying in restricted airspace. Identify yourself and follow us to Nellis Air Force Base immediately." The response came in a voice that was calm, professional, and utterly chilling in its familiarity to anyone who knew Air Force history. "Viper 1, this is Reaper 27. I copy your instructions, but I'm afraid I can't comply at this time. I have a mission to complete." Sullivan's hands trembled slightly on his controls. Reaper 27. Every pilot in the Air Force knew that call sign, even if they'd never heard the full story. It belonged to a legend, a ghost story, a pilot who had supposedly died in classified operations over Iraq in 1991. Reaper 27, he managed to say, please state the nature of your mission. You are ordered to return to base immediately. Negative, Viper 1. My mission parameters remain classified. I suggest you return to your patrol sector. Shen's voice cut through the radio chatter. Jake, that tail number. 77992. Isn't that the aircraft that supposedly went down over Baghdad? The one they never found? Before Sullivan could respond, a new voice joined the conversation. It was their ground controller, but the tone was different now, more urgent. Viper 1 and 2, be advised that Reaper 27 is now classified as a priority intercept. You are authorized to use any means necessary to bring that aircraft to Nellis. Do you copy? Control, please clarify any means necessary. Are we authorized to use weapons? Another pause, longer this time. Viper 1, you are cleared hot. Repeat, you are cleared hot. That aircraft must be brought down. Sullivan felt his mouth go dry. They were being ordered to potentially shoot down an American A-10, flown by a pilot using a call sign that belonged to a decorated war hero. Nothing about this made sense. Reaper 27, this is Viper 1. I have orders to escort you to base. Please comply immediately. The woman's voice came back steady and calm. Viper 1, I know you're just following orders. But I need you to understand something. What I'm carrying in this aircraft could change everything you think you know about what happened in Iraq. There are people who have spent 30 years making sure this information never sees the light of day. Ma'am, I don't know what you're talking about, but my orders are clear. Please turn to heading 270 and begin descent to Nellis. I can't do that, Captain Sullivan. Sullivan's blood turned to ice. She had used his name. His real name, not his call sign. How could she possibly know who he was? How do you know my name? Because I know a lot more than you think, Jake. I know your father served in the 23rd Tactical Fighter Wing during Desert Storm. I know your mother still keeps his medals in a box in her bedroom. And I know that what I'm about to tell you will explain why he never talked about his last mission over Baghdad. Shen's voice was sharp with tension. Jake, we need to make a decision here. Ground control is getting angry, and this situation is escalating fast. Sullivan stared at the battle-scarred Warthog flying alongside them. The pilot claiming to be Reaper 27 seemed to know things that were impossible for her to know. His father had indeed served in Desert Storm, and he had indeed been reluctant to discuss his final missions. Reaper 27, you're going to need to explain yourself. My orders haven't changed. Fair enough, Captain. But first, I need you to look at something. Check your radar. Tell me what you see directly beneath us. Sullivan glanced at his instruments. His radar was showing something that shouldn't have been there. A large, metallic signature approximately 5 miles below them, partially buried in the desert sand. The signature was massive, far too large to be natural geological formation. I'm showing a large contact on the ground, Sullivan reported to Chen and ground control. Viper 1, disregard ground contacts and focus on your target, came the sharp reply from control. But the woman's voice cut through again. That contact, Captain, is why I'm here. It's a piece of technology that officially doesn't exist, shot down during a mission that never happened, by pilots who were never there. Your father was part of the squadron that was supposed to retrieve it 30 years ago. They were told it was a routine cleanup operation. They were lied to. Sullivan's mind raced. His father had mentioned something once, during one of his rare discussions about the war. Something about a mission that didn't make it into any official reports, something that had bothered him for years afterward. Even if what you're saying is true, Sullivan said, that doesn't change my orders. I need you to follow us to Nellis. I understand your position, Captain. But I need you to understand mine. I've been dead for 30 years, officially speaking. The woman flying this aircraft doesn't exist in any military records. Captain Sarah Martinez was killed in action over Baghdad in February 1991, according to her file. Then, who are you? I'm someone who found out the truth about what really happened during Desert Storm. I'm someone who discovered that American pilots were used as unknowing participants in the retrieval of technology that could revolutionize warfare. And I'm someone who has spent 3 decades gathering evidence to prove it. Chen's voice was tight with stress. Jake, ground control is ordering us to fire warning shots. This is escalating beyond anything I'm comfortable with. Sullivan looked at the A-10 again. Despite its battle scars, it flew with the precision and grace that only came from an exceptional pilot. Whoever was flying that aircraft was clearly skilled, and their knowledge of his personal information suggested connections and resources that went far beyond what a rogue pilot should have had access to. Control, this is Viper 1. Request clarification on rules of engagement. The pilot is claiming to have information about classified operations from Desert Storm. Viper 1, your orders remain unchanged. Bring that aircraft down immediately. Reaper 27, Sullivan said, I'm running out of options here. My orders are clear, and my commanding officers are not giving me any flexibility. I understand, Captain. But before you make your final decision, I want you to know something. That wreckage beneath us isn't the only thing buried in this desert. There are graves down there too. American graves. Pilots who found out too much and asked too many questions. The words hit Sullivan like a physical blow. The implication was clear and terrifying. American military personnel, possibly pilots, had been killed to protect whatever secret lay buried in the Nevada desert. You're saying American soldiers were murdered to cover this up? I'm saying that some secrets are considered more important than individual lives, Captain. Even American lives. Chen's voice crackled through the radio. Jake, I'm getting multiple contacts on radar. We have company coming in fast from the southeast. Looks like F-22s, probably from Nellis. Sullivan's heart sank. F-22 Raptors were the Air Force's most advanced fighters. If they were being scrambled, it meant this situation had escalated far beyond a simple intercept mission. It meant that whoever was pulling the strings considered the A-10 and its pilot to be a serious threat. Reaper 27, we have F-22s inbound. This situation is about to get very serious. I know, Captain. They've been tracking me since I took off from Creech this morning. I had hoped to complete my mission before they could intercept, but it seems time has run out. What exactly is your mission? To expose the truth, Captain. To finally tell the world what really happened during Desert Storm, and what's still happening in black sites around the world. The wreckage below us is just the beginning. Sullivan felt torn between his training, his orders, and a growing sense that he was caught in the middle of something much larger and more dangerous than a simple intercept mission. The pilot claiming to be Reaper 27 had demonstrated knowledge that suggested high-level access to classified information, and her claims about cover-ups and murdered American personnel were deeply disturbing. Control, this is Viper 1. I need to speak with my commanding officer immediately. Viper 1, your orders remain unchanged. Neutralize the target immediately. The word neutralize sent a chill through Sullivan. They weren't talking about forcing the aircraft to land anymore. They were talking about shooting it down. Reaper 27, they're ordering me to shoot you down. I need you to land that aircraft immediately. I can't do that, Captain. But I want you to know that whatever happens next, you have a choice to make. You can follow orders and help bury the truth for another 30 years, or you can help me expose what really happened. Chen's voice was urgent now. Jake, the F-22s are 2 minutes out. We need to make a decision now. Sullivan stared at the scarred A-10 flying alongside him. The pilot had claimed to know things about his father that no rogue operator should have known. She had demonstrated intimate knowledge of classified operations and military personnel. Most importantly, she seemed genuinely committed to exposing what she believed to be a massive cover-up involving American military personnel. Reaper 27, if what you're saying is true, why haven't you gone to the media? Why this dramatic flight over the desert? Because, Captain, the media can't verify what I'm about to show them. But pilots can. Military personnel can. The wreckage below us contains technology and evidence that will speak for itself, but only if it's examined by people who understand what they're looking at. And you think flying over it in an A-10 is going to accomplish that? I think, Captain, that what happens in the next few minutes is going to determine whether the truth finally comes out, or whether it gets buried for another generation. The radio crackled with a new voice, cold and authoritative. Viper 1 and Viper 2, this is Raptor Leader. We are taking control of this intercept. RTB immediately. RTB. Return to base. They were being ordered to abandon the intercept and let the F-22s handle it. Sullivan felt a chill of realization. If the F-22s were taking over, it meant the situation had moved beyond simple law enforcement. It meant that whoever was in that A-10 was considered a serious enough threat to warrant the Air Force's most advanced fighters. Reaper 27, Sullivan said quickly, the F-22s are here. This is your last chance to land peacefully. I know, Captain. And this is your last chance to learn the truth about what your father really saw over Baghdad. The words hung in the air like a challenge, a final invitation to step across a line that Sullivan had never imagined he would face. Around him, the desert stretched endlessly, holding secrets that had been buried for decades and graves that officially didn't exist. Captain Jake Sullivan watched the F-22 Raptors approach on his radar, their sleek forms cutting through the desert sky like predators closing in on prey. The situation had escalated beyond anything in his training, and the weight of the decision before him felt heavier than his aircraft. Viper 1, this is Raptor Leader. You are ordered to break contact and return to base immediately. We are taking over this intercept. Sullivan keyed his radio, his mind racing. Raptor Leader, be advised the target pilot claims to have classified information about Desert Storm operations. Recommend establishing communication before taking action. Viper 1, your recommendation is noted. RTB immediately. This is not a request. The voice of Reaper 27 cut through the military formality. Captain Sullivan, before you leave, I want to tell you something about your father. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Sullivan, service number 447-1836. On February 23, 1991, he was part of a squadron ordered to investigate a downed aircraft in the Iraqi desert. What they found wasn't an Iraqi plane. Sullivan's hands gripped his controls tighter. The service number was correct, something that wouldn't have been easily accessible to unauthorized personnel. His father had indeed been a lieutenant colonel during Desert Storm, and February 23 had been near the end of the ground war. How do you know that information? Because I was there, Captain. I was part of the recovery team that your father was sent to support. The operation was called Silent Thunder, though you won't find it in any official records. Chen's voice broke through the exchange. Jake, the F-22s are positioning for an attack run. We need to clear the area now. Sullivan looked down at the radar contact below them, the massive signature buried in the desert sand. Whatever was down there had been important enough to mobilize F-22s and important enough to justify what appeared to be a kill order on an American pilot. Reaper 27, what exactly did my father see out there? Technology that officially doesn't exist, Captain. Propulsion systems that defy conventional physics. Materials that our science couldn't explain in 1991 and still struggles with today. Your father and his squadron were told it was experimental Soviet hardware that needed to be secured before enemy forces could recover it. The F-22s were now visible on the horizon, four gray shapes moving with lethal purpose across the blue sky. Sullivan knew their capabilities intimately. Against an A-10, there would be no contest. The Warthog was tough, but it wasn't built for air-to-air combat against the world's most advanced fighters. But it wasn't Soviet technology, was it? Sullivan found himself asking, despite the growing danger of the situation. No, Captain. It wasn't Soviet. It wasn't American. It wasn't from anywhere on Earth. The word sent a shock through Sullivan's system. The implication was impossible, but the pilot's tone suggested absolute conviction. She was claiming that the wreckage below contained extraterrestrial technology. Viper 1, this is Raptor Leader. Final warning. Clear the area immediately or be considered hostile. Sullivan felt the walls closing in around him. Following orders meant abandoning the A-10 to almost certain destruction. Staying meant becoming a target himself. But the pilot's claims about his father, combined with her detailed knowledge of classified information, suggested that there might be truth to her story. Reaper 27, even if what you're saying is true, there's nothing I can do to help you. Those F-22s will shoot you down before you can prove anything. Maybe, Captain. But you can witness what happens next. You can see for yourself whether they're trying to stop a rogue pilot or silence someone who knows too much. Chen's voice was urgent. Jake, I'm picking up missile lock warnings. The F-22s are going hot. Sullivan made a decision that would change his life forever. Control, this is Viper 1. I am declaring an in-flight emergency and requesting immediate landing at the nearest available field. Viper 1, negative. Return to Nellis immediately. Control, I am experiencing severe engine malfunction and cannot maintain altitude for return to Nellis. I need to land immediately. It was a lie, but it bought him time and a legitimate reason to stay in the area. Chen looked at him through her canopy, her expression questioning but trusting. Raptor leader, this is Viper 1. I have an in-flight emergency and need to find a place to land. Can you provide cover while I locate a suitable landing site? The pause was longer this time. The F-22 flight leader was clearly receiving new instructions from a higher authority. Viper 1, your emergency is noted. Proceed to emergency landing procedures. Viper 2, escort your wingman to a safe landing site. It was a reprieve, temporary but valuable. Sullivan used the time to study the A-10 more closely. The battle scars on the aircraft were extensive and clearly recent. The pilot claiming to be Sarah Martinez was flying with skill that suggested extensive combat experience, but the aircraft itself should have been in a museum if it truly dated from the Gulf War. Reaper 27, your aircraft looks like it's seen combat recently. Where have you been fighting? Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia. Anywhere American interests needed protecting but couldn't be publicly acknowledged. Black operations, Captain. The kind your government denies exist. The revelation was staggering. She was claiming to have been flying combat missions for 30 years while officially dead. The implications for military accountability and government oversight were enormous. That's impossible. There would be records, flight logs, maintenance reports. There are records, Captain. Just not ones that are accessible through normal channels. When you officially don't exist, your missions don't appear in standard databases. One of the F-22s was now positioning directly behind the A-10, clearly preparing for a kill shot. Sullivan could see the sleek fighter's weapons bay doors beginning to open. Raptor leader, what are your intentions regarding the A-10? Viper 1, maintain your emergency procedures. The A-10 will be handled appropriately. The euphemism was chilling. Handled appropriately in this context almost certainly meant destruction. Sullivan watched as the lead F-22 locked onto the Warthog. The pilot claiming to be Reaper 27 would have seen the missile lock warning, but she continued flying straight and level, as if accepting her fate. Reaper 27, you have missile lock. Take evasive action. Negative, Captain. If they're going to murder me, I want you to witness it. I want someone to know that an American pilot was shot down by American fighters for trying to tell the truth. The words hit Sullivan like a physical blow. Murder. She was accusing the Air Force of preparing to commit murder to protect classified information. Raptor leader, this is Viper 1. Request confirmation of rules of engagement. The target pilot is unarmed and poses no immediate threat. Viper 1, your concern is noted. Continue your emergency procedures. Sullivan realized with growing horror that he was about to witness the execution of an American pilot. The F-22's missile lock was solid, and the aircraft was in perfect firing position. There was no legal or moral justification for what was about to happen, but it was clearly going to happen anyway. Reaper 27, they're going to fire. You need to take evasive action now. I know, Captain. But before they do, I want you to remember something. Whatever story they tell you about this incident, whatever explanation they provide, remember that you saw an unarmed American pilot shot down for trying to expose the truth. The radio crackled with a new transmission, this one encrypted and barely audible. Sullivan caught fragments, authorization confirmed, target elimination, priority alpha. He felt sick. The United States Air Force was about to murder one of its own pilots, and he was being ordered to witness it while pretending to have mechanical problems. Raptor leader, I am declaring this action unlawful under military regulations. The target poses no threat and is attempting to communicate. Viper 1, you are ordered to maintain radio silence and continue your emergency procedures. Sullivan looked at Chen, who was monitoring the same communications. Her face was pale with shock and growing understanding of what they were witnessing. The F-22's weapons bay doors were fully open now, and Sullivan could see the missile hanging in its launch rail. In seconds, it would fire, and the A-10 would be destroyed along with whatever evidence or testimony its pilot carried. But, then, something unexpected happened. The pilot of the A-10 began transmitting on an open frequency, one that could be picked up by civilian aircraft and ground stations across the region. "This is Captain Sarah Martinez, United States Air Force, service number 773499921, broadcasting on emergency frequency. I am currently being targeted for destruction by U.S. military aircraft while attempting to expose information about illegal government operations. The wreckage of an unidentified aircraft is located at coordinates 37.2431 degrees north, 115.7930 degrees west. This wreckage has been concealed from public knowledge for over 30 years. The transmission was being broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously, ensuring maximum coverage." Sullivan realized that the pilot had been prepared for this moment, ready to make her testimony public even as she faced destruction. "Raptor leader, target is broadcasting on open frequencies. Recommend immediate action to prevent further intelligence compromise." The F-22 fired. Sullivan watched in horror as the AIM-120 AMRAAM missile streaked toward the A-10. The Warthog was a tough aircraft, designed to absorb punishment, but it wasn't built to survive a direct hit from an advanced air-to-air missile. But, instead of the expected explosion, something extraordinary happened. The A-10 suddenly dropped like a stone, diving toward the desert floor with impossible speed. The missile, designed to track airborne targets, lost lock as the Warthog disappeared into what appeared to be a controlled crash dive. "Target appears to have taken evasive action," reported Raptor leader, his voice showing the first signs of uncertainty. Sullivan watched through his canopy as the A-10 leveled out mere feet above the desert floor, flying at treetop level toward the coordinates the pilot had broadcast. The maneuver was incredibly dangerous, but it had successfully defeated the missile. "Raptor leader, target is still airborne and proceeding to ground coordinates." "Copy, Viper 1. All aircraft, maintain pursuit. Target must not reach the specified coordinates." Sullivan realized that the location the pilot had broadcast was directly above the radar contact they had detected earlier. She wasn't just trying to escape, she was heading directly for the buried wreckage she claimed contained evidence of a massive cover-up. The F-22s dub after the A-10, their advanced engines allowing them to easily match the Warthog's low-altitude flight. But, flying at high speed just above the desert floor was dangerous even for the most advanced aircraft, and the rocky terrain provided natural obstacles that favored a skilled pilot familiar with the area. Sullivan watched as the A-10 weaved between rock formations and small hills, using the terrain to break missile locks and avoid cannon fire from the pursuing F-22s. Whoever was flying that Warthog was demonstrating skills that suggested extensive low-level combat experience. "Viper 1, this is Control. Your emergency status is revoked. You are ordered to join the pursuit of the A-10 immediately." The order was clear and direct. Sullivan could no longer use mechanical problems as an excuse to avoid participating in what was essentially a murder. He was being ordered to help hunt down an American pilot who was trying to expose what she claimed was government corruption. "Control, request clarification of rules of engagement. Are we authorized to fire on American military personnel?" Viper 1, the target is considered a terrorist threat to national security. Use of deadly force is authorized. Terrorist. They were labeling an American pilot as a terrorist for attempting to expose classified information. The term provided legal cover for what would otherwise be murder, but it didn't make the action any less morally reprehensible. Sullivan found himself at a crossroads that would define the rest of his life. He could follow orders, help destroy the A-10 and its pilot, and continue his career as if nothing had happened. Or he could refuse, face court-martial, and live with the knowledge that he had tried to do the right thing. "Jake," Chen's voice came through his headset, quiet and urgent. "What are we going to do?" Sullivan looked down at the desert, where an American pilot was fighting for her life against overwhelming odds while trying to expose what she believed was a massive government conspiracy. Whether her claims were true or not, the reaction of military command suggested that there was indeed something significant being hidden. "Lisa, I need you to make a choice. We can follow orders and help murder an American pilot, or we can try to find out what she's really discovered." Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "My grandfather died in World War II fighting fascists. I didn't join the Air Force to become one. it was all the answers Sullivan needed. He banked his F-16 toward the low-flying A-10, but not to attack it. Instead, he intended to provide cover for whatever the pilot was trying to accomplish. Control, this is Viper 1. I'm having difficulty maintaining lock on the target due to terrain interference. Requesting permission to engage at close range. Viper 1, cleared to engage at close range. Eliminate the target by any means necessary. Sullivan dove toward the desert floor, ostensibly to attack the A-10 but actually to position himself between the Warthog and the pursuing F-22s. What happened next would depend on whether he could convince the Raptor pilots to stand down, or whether he would have to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect someone who might be the only person willing to tell the truth about what the government had hidden in the Nevada desert. Captain Jake Sullivan pushed his F-16 into a steep dive, racing toward the desert floor where the A-10 Warthog continued its desperate low-level flight toward the coordinates Sarah Martinez had broadcast. The landscape below was a maze of rocky outcroppings and dried ravines that provided natural cover from the pursuing F-22s, but Sullivan knew that advantage wouldn't last long. Viper 2, maintain altitude and provide overwatch, Sullivan radioed to Chen. I'm going down to assess the situation. Copy that, Jake. Be careful down there. As Sullivan leveled out just above the desert floor, he found himself flying parallel to the battle-scarred A-10. Through his canopy, he could see the pilot in the Warthog's cockpit, her helmet and flight suit marking her unmistakably as military. Despite the chaos of the pursuit, she flew with calm precision that spoke of extensive combat experience. Reaper 2-7, this is Viper 1. What exactly are you trying to accomplish here? Captain Sullivan, I'm about to show you something that will change your understanding of everything your government has told you. The wreckage ahead contains technology that proves we've been in contact with extraterrestrial intelligence since 1947, and that contact has been hidden from the American people for over 70 years. The claim was staggering, but Sullivan had seen enough in the past hour to know that conventional explanations weren't adequate for what was happening. The woman's detailed knowledge of classified information, her apparent resurrection from official death records, and the extreme measures being taken to stop her all suggested that her claims deserved serious consideration. Raptor leader to all aircraft. Target is approaching sensitive area. Deadly force is now authorized without further warning. The radio transmission confirmed Sullivan's worst fears. They weren't just trying to stop a rogue pilot, they were trying to prevent her from reaching something that the highest levels of government considered critically important to national security. Reaper 2-7, the F-22s have been cleared to fire without warning. You need to abort this mission. Negative, Captain. I've been preparing for this moment for 30 years. Everything I've done, every mission I've flown, every risk I've taken, has been leading to this point. The American people have a right to know what their government has been hiding. Ahead of them, Sullivan could see the area where his radar had detected the large metallic signature. The desert appeared unremarkable from the air, but, as they flew closer, subtle signs became visible. The sand showed patterns that suggested it had been disturbed and carefully replaced. Geometric shapes were barely visible beneath the surface, and there were clear signs that heavy equipment had operated in the area. The A-10 began to slow, circling the site in a tight pattern that allowed for detailed observation. Sullivan found himself doing the same, his pilot's training automatically taking in details and analyzing what he saw. Captain, look at the sand patterns. See how they form perfect geometric shapes? That's not natural erosion or wind action. Something large and structured is buried here. Sullivan had to admit she was right. The patterns were too regular and too extensive to be natural. Whatever was buried beneath the sand was enormous, possibly larger than an aircraft carrier. Viper 1, this is Raptor leader. Break contact with the A-10 and climb to safe altitude immediately. You are too close to the target. Sullivan realized that the F-22s couldn't fire their missiles without risking hitting his aircraft as well. By staying close to the A-10, he was providing inadvertent protection. But that protection would only last as long as he remained in position. Raptor leader, I need to verify the target's intentions before we take lethal action. Give me 2 minutes to establish communication. Viper 1, you have 30 seconds, then clear the area. It wasn't much time, but it might be enough to learn the truth about what lay buried in the Nevada desert. Reaper 2-7, you have 30 seconds to show me whatever evidence you have. Make it count. The A-10 suddenly dropped even lower, its landing gear extending as if preparing for an emergency landing. Sullivan watched in amazement as the Warthog touched down on the desert floor, kicking up clouds of sand and dust as it rolled to a stop directly over the geometric patterns they had observed from the air. "She's landed," Sullivan reported, his voice tight with tension. "Reaper 27 is on the ground at the target coordinates. Viper 1, clear the area immediately. We are beginning our attack run." Sullivan climbed rapidly, but kept his aircraft positioned where he could observe what happened next. The A-10 sat motionless on the desert floor, its engines still running. After a moment, the canopy opened and the pilot climbed out. Even from altitude, Sullivan could see that she moved with purpose and familiarity. This wasn't someone making a desperate last stand, this was someone executing a carefully planned operation. The woman walked to a specific point in the sand and began digging with what appeared to be a small folding shovel from her survival kit. Within minutes, she had exposed what looked like a metallic surface. The sunlight reflected off it in a way that suggested materials unlike any conventional aircraft construction. "My God," Sullivan whispered into his radio. "She's actually found something." The pilot continued digging, exposing more of the metallic surface. As she worked, the shape that emerged was unlike anything in Sullivan's experience. It wasn't angular like conventional aircraft, but curved and smooth in ways that seemed to flow like liquid metal. "Viper 1, what is your status?" came Raptor leader's voice. "I'm observing the target on the ground. She appears to be excavating some kind of buried object." "Viper 1, the nature of the object is irrelevant. Clear the area for weapons release." But Sullivan found he couldn't move. What he was seeing defied rational explanation. The pilot had accurately predicted the location of what appeared to be a crashed aircraft of completely unknown design, buried in the Nevada desert for decades. The woman on the ground suddenly looked up toward the approaching F-22s and raised what appeared to be a small device toward the sky. Sullivan couldn't tell what it was from his altitude, but its purpose became clear when his radio crackled with a new transmission. "This is Captain Sarah Martinez, broadcasting live via satellite uplink to multiple news organizations worldwide. I am currently standing beside the wreckage of an extraterrestrial aircraft that crashed in the Nevada desert in 1947 and was subsequently buried by the U.S. military. The technology from this craft has been reverse engineered and used in classified military projects for over 70 years. Sullivan realized with shock that she was broadcasting live video footage to the media. Whatever happened next would be witnessed by potentially millions of people around the world. The aircraft you can see in this footage uses propulsion technology that operates outside the known laws of physics. The materials are composed of elements that don't appear on the periodic table, and the design incorporates principles that our science is only beginning to understand. The F-22s were now positioning for their attack run, but they faced an impossible situation. Attacking the A-10 while the pilot was broadcasting live would be seen by the entire world as the murder of someone trying to expose government secrets. Sullivan watched as more of the strange craft became visible. The pilot's excavation had revealed what appeared to be the edge of a disc-shaped object perhaps 50 feet in diameter. The surface showed no signs of conventional construction methods, no rivets or welds or seams. It appeared to be formed from a single piece of material. "Captain Sullivan," came the woman's voice over the radio, "I want you to look carefully at this craft. Notice the absence of any visible propulsion system. No engines, no exhaust ports, no moving parts. This vehicle operated on principles that our physics textbooks say are impossible." Sullivan stared at the partially excavated craft through his high-powered optics. She was right. There were no visible means of propulsion, yet the object was clearly some kind of aircraft or spacecraft. "Reaper 27, even if what you're showing is real, it doesn't justify violating direct orders from military command. Captain, 30 years ago your father stood in almost exactly the same spot where I'm standing now. He saw the same craft, asked the same questions, and was given the same lies I was given. The difference is that he chose to believe those lies and keep the secret. I chose to spend 3 decades gathering evidence to expose the truth." The words hit Sullivan like a physical blow. His father had indeed changed after returning from Desert Storm, becoming more withdrawn and reluctant to discuss his military service. If the woman was telling the truth, it explained decades of his father's behavior. "What exactly did my father see here?" "He saw proof that humanity is not alone in the universe, Captain. He saw technology that could solve our energy crisis, our environmental problems, our resource limitations. And he saw that technology being hidden from the people who had a right to benefit from it. The radio crackled with a new voice, cold and authoritative. It was clearly someone of high rank, possibly a general. "All aircraft, this is Blackbird Control. The target on the ground is broadcasting classified information to unauthorized recipients. You are cleared to fire immediately to prevent further intelligence compromise." Sullivan felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. In the next few seconds, he would either witness the murder of someone trying to expose the truth, or participate in it himself. Raptor leader, beginning attack run. All aircraft clear the area. The lead F-22 dove toward the desert floor, its cannon already spinning up for the killing burst. At that range and, with that firepower, nothing would survive the attack. But, as the Raptor approached firing position, something extraordinary happened. The partially excavated craft began to glow with a soft blue light. The glow intensified rapidly, becoming bright enough to be visible even in the desert sunlight. "All aircraft, we are detecting massive electromagnetic interference from the target area," reported a new voice on the radio. "Recommend breaking off the attack until we can assess the situation." The F-22's electronics began to malfunction. Sullivan could hear the pilot's voice, tight with concern, reporting systems failures and instrument malfunctions. The advanced fighter was being affected by whatever energy the buried craft was emitting. "Raptor leader, I'm experiencing complete electrical failure. All systems are down. Attempting emergency restart." One by one, the F-22s reported similar problems. Their sophisticated electronics, designed to be resistant to electromagnetic pulse weapons, were being overwhelmed by whatever energy the craft was producing. Sullivan checked his own instruments and found them functioning normally. His F-16, while advanced, used simpler electronics that appeared to be less susceptible to whatever interference the craft was generating. On the ground, the pilot stood beside the glowing craft, apparently unaffected by the energy that was disabling the most advanced fighters in the world. She continued her broadcast, documenting the craft's activation and the effect it was having on approaching military aircraft. "As you can see," she said calmly into her camera, "the craft appears to be responding to the presence of hostile intent." This defensive capability was documented in classified reports from 1947, but those reports were buried along with the craft itself. Sullivan realized that he was witnessing something that would change human history. Whether the craft was truly extraterrestrial or represented some unknown human technology, its capabilities clearly exceeded anything in the conventional military arsenal. The glow from the craft was now bright enough to be seen for miles across the desert. Anyone with a clear view of the Nevada sky would be able to see the light emanating from coordinates that had been broadcast live to the world. "Control, this is Viper 1. I am declaring this situation beyond the scope of standard military operations. Request immediate contact with higher authority. Viper 1, higher authority has already been notified. Your orders remain unchanged." But Sullivan knew that the orders were now impossible to execute. The F-22s were effectively neutralized, the pilot was broadcasting live to the world, and the craft itself was demonstrating capabilities that suggested it posed no threat to anything except the government's ability to keep its secrets. "Reaper 27, what happens now?" "Now, Captain, the world learns the truth. And people like your father can finally stop living with the burden of keeping secrets that were never theirs to keep." The woman on the ground walked back to her A-10, but instead of climbing into the cockpit, she began removing equipment from the aircraft's cargo compartment. Sullivan could see what appeared to be sophisticated recording and analysis equipment, suggesting that this moment had been planned in extensive detail. "Captain Sullivan, I want you to understand something. What you're witnessing today has been 30 years in the making. Every classified mission I've flown, every black operation I've participated in, every risk I've taken, has been building toward this moment." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that sometimes the only way to serve your country is to disobey its government. Your father understood that choice in 1991. Today, it's your turn to understand it." Sullivan looked around at the disabled F-22s, the glowing craft on the desert floor, and the woman who had orchestrated one of the most significant intelligence disclosures in human history. Nothing would ever be the same again, and he was faced with a choice that would define not just his own future, but possibly the future of humanity itself. The electromagnetic pulse from the buried craft had effectively grounded the F-22s, their advanced systems overwhelmed by energies that conventional military technology wasn't designed to handle. Captain Jake Sullivan found himself in the unique position of being the only functional military aircraft in the area, watching as Captain Sarah Martinez continued her live broadcast to a worldwide audience that was witnessing the exposure of perhaps the greatest secret in human history. Sullivan's radio crackled with increasingly frantic communications from various levels of military command. Generals, colonels, and intelligence officials were all demanding updates, explanations, and immediate action to stop the broadcast. But, with the F-22s neutralized and the A-10 on the ground beside an apparently functioning extraterrestrial craft, conventional military options had been exhausted. Viper 1, this is Pentagon Control, came a voice that Sullivan recognized as belonging to someone very high in the chain of command. You are ordered to use any means necessary to stop that broadcast immediately. Pentagon Control, please clarify any means necessary. The target is an unarmed American pilot conducting what appears to be a legitimate intelligence disclosure. Viper 1, the classification level of the information being disclosed supersedes normal rules of engagement. You are authorized to fire on the target immediately. Sullivan felt sick. They were ordering him to murder an American pilot on live television, in front of a worldwide audience, to protect classified information. The order was not just morally reprehensible, it was tactical suicide that would confirm everything the pilot was claiming about government cover-ups. Pentagon Control, I cannot comply with that order. Firing on an unarmed American service member would constitute murder under military law. The pause that followed was longer than usual. Sullivan could imagine the discussions taking place at the highest levels of government as officials realized that their primary plan for stopping the disclosure had failed. On the ground, Sarah Martinez continued her methodical documentation of the craft. She had produced sophisticated scanning equipment that was recording electromagnetic signatures, taking detailed photographs, and, apparently conducting some kind of materials analysis. Everything was being broadcast live via satellite uplink that appeared to be immune to the electromagnetic interference affecting the F-22s. Captain Sullivan, her voice came clearly through his radio, I want you to see something that will explain why your father never talked about his final mission in Iraq. She walked to another section of the partially buried craft and began clearing away sand from what appeared to be some kind of viewing port or window. As the transparent material became visible, Sullivan could see through it into the interior of the craft. What he saw defied rational explanation. The interior appeared to be much larger than the exterior dimensions would suggest, filled with what looked like control surfaces and displays that bore no resemblance to any human technology. But, more disturbing were the objects that appeared to be seats designed for occupants who were clearly not human. The crew compartment is designed for beings approximately 4 feet in height with significantly larger craniums than humans, Martinez explained to her worldwide audience. Forensic analysis of recovered biological material confirmed that the occupants were not terrestrial in origin. Sullivan stared through his aircraft's optics at the impossible scene below. If what he was seeing was real, it confirmed decades of speculation and conspiracy theories about extraterrestrial contact. More importantly, it suggested that the US government had been in possession of proof of alien life for over 70 years while publicly denying its existence. Reaper 27, you're claiming that the government has been covering up proof of extraterrestrial life since 1947? Not just covering it up, Captain. Weaponizing it. The technology recovered from this craft and others like it has been reverse engineered to create military systems that provide the United States with overwhelming technological superiority. Your stealth aircraft, your advanced missile systems, your satellite technology, all of it incorporates principles learned from studying craft like this one. The implications were staggering. If Martinez was telling the truth, it meant that American military supremacy was based on stolen alien technology, hidden from both the American people and the international community. Sullivan's radio erupted with a new voice, this one belonging to someone he recognized as the Secretary of Defense. Captain Sullivan, this is Secretary Harrison. You are hereby ordered to withdraw from the area immediately. Long-range assets are being deployed to resolve this situation. Long-range assets. Sullivan felt his blood run cold. They were talking about cruise missiles or possibly even nuclear weapons. The government was prepared to obliterate the entire area to prevent the truth from emerging. Mr. Secretary, there are American personnel on the ground. Rules of engagement prohibit the use of weapons that would result in friendly casualties. Captain, the personnel on the ground is considered a terrorist and enemy combatant. There are no friendly casualties in this scenario. The words hit Sullivan like a physical blow. The government was classifying Sarah Martinez as a terrorist to provide legal cover for her murder. An American war hero, a decorated pilot who had apparently served in classified operations for 3 decades, was being declared an enemy of the state for trying to tell the truth. Viper 1, you have 10 minutes to clear the area before long-range assets arrive on target.
10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, the entire area would be obliterated, along with the craft, the evidence, and anyone unfortunate enough to be nearby. Sullivan made a decision that would define the rest of his life.
Pentagon Control, this is Captain Jake Sullivan.
I am declaring this action unlawful under international law, military regulations, and basic human decency. I cannot and will not participate in the murder of an American service member. The silence that followed was deafening. Sullivan had just refused a direct order from the Secretary of Defense, effectively ending his military career and, possibly, his freedom. Viper 1, you are hereby relieved of duty and ordered to return to base immediately for court-martial proceedings.
Negative, Pentagon Control. I am remaining on station to witness whatever happens next.
Chen's voice cut through the military communications.
Jake, I'm with you. Whatever happens, we stick together.
Sullivan felt a surge of gratitude for his wingman's loyalty, even as he realized he had probably destroyed her career as well. On the ground, Martinez had apparently heard the exchange. She looked up towards Sullivan's aircraft and keyed her radio. Captain, you don't have to sacrifice your career for this. The truth is already out there.
Millions of people around the world are watching this broadcast.
The secret is broken, regardless of what happens to me. Ma'am, with all due respect, I'm not doing this just for you.
I'm doing it because some things are more important than following orders. Martinez smiled, an expression visible even from Sullivan's altitude.
Your father would be proud, Captain. He always regretted not having the courage to make the choice you just made. Sullivan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Whatever consequences he faced, he knew he had made the right decision. The buried craft's glow was now visible for miles across the desert. News helicopters were appearing on the horizon, drawn by the coordinates broadcast during Martinez's initial transmission. The government's window for quietly suppressing the disclosure was rapidly closing. Martinez had moved to another section of the craft and was documenting what appeared to be some kind of propulsion system. The technology was unlike anything in human experience, incorporating materials and design principles that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. The propulsion system operates on principles of controlled gravity manipulation, she explained to her audience. This technology could revolutionize transportation, eliminate fossil fuel dependence, and open the door to practical interstellar travel. It has been hidden from the human race for over 70 years. Sullivan found himself thinking about the implications of what he was witnessing. If the technology Martinez was documenting could be shared with civilian researchers, it could solve humanity's greatest challenges. Climate change, energy shortages, resource limitations, all could be addressed with technology that had been sitting in classified storage for decades. But he also understood why the government had kept it secret. The military applications of gravity manipulation technology would be devastating. Any nation that possessed it would have overwhelming superiority over conventional military forces.
Reaper 27, what's your plan?
Even if this broadcast exposes the truth, they're still going to destroy this site to prevent further analysis. The broadcast is just the beginning, Captain.
I've spent 30 years preparing for this moment.
There are other sites, other craft, other pieces of evidence hidden around the world.
What happens here today will trigger the release of information that will make it impossible for any government to continue the cover-up. Sullivan realized that Martinez had orchestrated something far more comprehensive than a single dramatic disclosure.
She had apparently built a network of evidence and prepared revelations that would cascade around the world regardless of what happened to her personally. His radio crackled with a new transmission, this one from an unfamiliar voice.
All aircraft in the Nevada test range, this is Reaper Flight. We are inbound with long-range precision munitions. Clear the area immediately. Sullivan looked toward the horizon and could see the contrails of approaching aircraft.
The government had deployed bombers to destroy the site, accepting the inevitable international incident that would result from bombing their own territory on live television.
Reaper 27, you have inbound bombers. This is your last chance to evacuate. Negative, Captain.
I've been running from this truth for 30 years.
Today, it ends here.
Martinez walked back to her A-10 and retrieved what appeared to be a large briefcase. She carried it to the edge of the excavated craft and placed it carefully on the alien metal.
This case contains 30 years of documentation about extraterrestrial contact, reverse-engineered technology, and government cover-ups.
Physical evidence, photographs, witness statements, technical analyses, and government documents that prove everything I've told you today. She activated some kind of transmitter in the briefcase, and Sullivan's instruments detected a powerful data burst being transmitted via satellite.
The information in this case is now being uploaded to secure servers around the world.
Mirror sites, news organizations, scientific institutions, and government transparency groups.
Even if this site is destroyed, the evidence will survive.
Sullivan realized that Martinez had turned her final stand into a dead man switch. Killing her would only ensure that her evidence received maximum attention and credibility.
The approaching bombers were now clearly visible, their bomb bay doors opening in preparation for weapons release. In minutes, the entire area would be obliterated.
But, as Sullivan watched, something extraordinary began to happen. The buried craft's glow intensified dramatically, and similar lights began appearing at locations across the horizon.
Dozens of them, scattered across the desert, all activating simultaneously.
Captain Martinez's voice was filled with wonder. They're responding to each other. Every buried craft in this area is activating.
Sullivan stared in amazement as the Nevada desert lit up like a constellation.
Dozens of sites that had been hidden for decades were now announcing their presence with beacons of light that could be seen from orbit. The bombers' radio communications were becoming increasingly frantic as their targeting systems began to malfunction. The electromagnetic interference from multiple activated craft was creating a denial zone that extended for hundreds of miles.
All aircraft, this is Reaper Lead. We are experiencing complete systems failure. Unable to complete bombing run. Requesting immediate assistance. Martinez looked up towards Sullivan's aircraft one final time. Captain Sullivan, tell the world what you witnessed here today.
Tell them that the truth can never be buried forever. And tell your father that his sacrifice in keeping the secret was not in vain, but that the time for secrets is over. As she spoke, the craft beneath her began to rise from its sandy grave, lifting slowly into the desert air with no visible means of propulsion. Other lights across the horizon were doing the same, as if responding to some signal that only they could understand. Sullivan watched in awe as humanity's first confirmed contact with extraterrestrial intelligence played out live on television, with himself as one of the few witnesses who could provide independent confirmation of what the world was seeing. The age of secrets was ending, and Jake Sullivan had chosen to be on the right side of history.
The Nevada desert had transformed into something from science fiction.
Dozens of extraterrestrial craft were rising from burial sites across the landscape, their soft blue glow creating an otherworldly aurora against the afternoon sky. Captain Jake Sullivan watched from his F-16 as Captain Sarah Martinez stood beside her A-10, documenting what would undoubtedly become the most significant moment in human history. The craft that had lifted Martinez and her aircraft into the air was now hovering approximately 50 feet above the desert floor.
Its smooth, disc-shaped form defied every principle of aerodynamics that Sullivan had learned in his decades of flying.
There were no wings, no visible engines, no rotating surfaces, yet it maintained perfect stability against the desert winds. Sullivan's radio erupted with communications from around the world as military forces, news organizations, and government officials tried to comprehend what they were witnessing. The live broadcast that Martinez had initiated was being watched by an estimated 300 million people worldwide, with the numbers climbing every minute as news of the disclosure spread across social media platforms. Viper 1, this is NORAD control. We are tracking 47 unknown aircraft rising from the Nevada test range.
Please confirm visual contact. NORAD control, confirmed.
I count 47 craft of unknown design rising from previously unmarked locations across the desert.
They appear to be operating in formation.
The craft were indeed moving in coordination, rising to various altitudes and positions that suggested intelligence and purpose. Some remained low, allowing news helicopters and military aircraft to observe them clearly. Others climbed to higher altitudes, their lights visible from hundreds of miles away. Martinez's voice came through the radio, calm despite the extraordinary circumstances. Captain Sullivan, what you're witnessing is the end of a cover-up that has lasted for over 70 years. These craft have been waiting, dormant, for the moment when their existence could no longer be denied.
Waiting for what?
For someone with the courage to tell the truth.
For someone willing to risk everything to give humanity the knowledge it deserves.
Sullivan watched as Martinez continued her documentation from the platform of the hovering craft. Her equipment was recording electromagnetic signatures, analyzing the craft's materials, and measuring gravitational anomalies that conventional physics said should be impossible. The gravitational field generated by this craft is localized and controllable, she explained to her worldwide audience. The implications for transportation, energy generation, and space exploration are beyond calculation.
This technology could transform human civilization within a generation.
The Pentagon's attempts to contain the situation had become increasingly desperate. Sullivan monitored military communications as officials at the highest levels of government struggled to develop a response to something they had clearly never expected to happen.
All aircraft in the Nevada area, this is Joint Chiefs Control.
The objects you are observing are classified experimental aircraft.
You are ordered to maintain distance and avoid any communication with media personnel.
But the explanation was already being debunked by the live broadcast. Martinez was demonstrating that the craft's capabilities far exceeded anything in the known military inventory, and her detailed knowledge of their history made it clear that they were not recent developments. These craft have been studied by human scientists since 1947, Martinez continued. The technology has been reverse-engineered to create military systems that have given the United States overwhelming tactical advantages for decades. Stealth technology, advanced materials, satellite systems, even the internet itself incorporates principles learned from these vehicles. Sullivan found himself thinking about his father, who had served during the Gulf War and had indeed seemed changed by his experiences. The possibility that Lieutenant Colonel Michael Sullivan had been part of the team that originally recovered this technology explained decades of his father's reluctant silence about his military service.
Reaper 27, you mentioned my father was part of the original recovery team. What exactly did he see?
Your father was a good man caught in an impossible situation, Captain. He saw technology that could transform the world, but he was ordered to help bury it in the name of national security. The conflict between his duty and his conscience haunted him for the rest of his life. The words hit Sullivan with unexpected emotional force. His father had died 3 years earlier, taking whatever secrets he carried to his grave. The revelation that those secrets involved perhaps the greatest discovery in human history made Sullivan understand his father's burden in a completely new way. Around them, the other craft had stabilized at various altitudes, creating a three-dimensional formation that stretched across the entire Nevada test range. Their coordinated movement suggested a level of intelligence and communication that was clearly beyond current human technology. Sullivan's instruments detected that the craft were exchanging some kind of electromagnetic signals, apparently communicating with each other through methods that human science was only beginning to understand.
Captain, Martinez said, I want you to understand that what's happening here today is bigger than just exposing government secrets.
We are witnessing first contact with an intelligence that has been observing humanity for centuries.
Are you saying these craft are piloted? Not in the conventional sense.
The artificial intelligence systems that operate these vehicles are so advanced that they effectively constitute a form of consciousness. They've been waiting for humanity to reach a level of development where open contact would be beneficial rather than destructive.
The implications were staggering.
If Martinez was correct, humanity was not just learning about the existence of extraterrestrial technology, but about the presence of artificial intelligence systems that had been monitoring human development for decades. Sullivan's radio crackled with a transmission from an unexpected source. Captain Sullivan, this is Colonel Michael Torres, Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
I am ordering you to land immediately at Nellis Air Force Base for debriefing.
Torres was a name Sullivan recognized from intelligence briefings. The Office of Special Investigations handled the Air Force's most sensitive security matters, and Torres's involvement suggested that this situation had reached the highest levels of military intelligence. Colonel Torres, I am maintaining my position to monitor the situation and ensure the safety of personnel on the ground.
Captain, you are interfering with a classified operation.
Land immediately or face charges of insubordination and, possibly treason.
The threat was clear and serious. Treason charges could result in life imprisonment or even execution.
But Sullivan found that the threat had little power over him.
What he was witnessing was too important to abandon for personal safety.
Colonel, with all due respect, I believe the classification of this operation has been overtaken by events. The whole world is watching this happen live.
Around them, news helicopters were maintaining a respectful distance while documenting the unprecedented scene. Military aircraft from multiple nations were approaching the area, drawn by reports of the massive formation of unknown craft. Martinez had apparently anticipated this escalation. She activated another piece of equipment that projected her voice across multiple radio frequencies, ensuring that her words would be heard by military personnel worldwide. To all military forces approaching this area, you are witnessing the end of the greatest cover-up in human history. The craft you see here have been hidden from humanity not to protect national security, but to maintain power structures that would be disrupted by the technological advances these vehicles represent. Her words were being heard by pilots from dozens of nations, all of whom were witnessing the same impossible scene. The secret was no longer just American, it had become a global revelation that no government could suppress. Sullivan watched as one of the larger craft descended toward Martinez's position. As it approached, a section of its smooth surface became transparent, revealing an interior that was clearly designed for human occupancy. "Captain Sullivan, they're inviting me aboard," Martinez said, her voice filled with wonder. "This is what we've been working toward for 30 years. Ma'am, that could be extremely dangerous. We don't know their intentions. I've been studying their technology for 3 decades, Captain. I know more about their intentions than any government official who spent the same time trying to weaponize what they left behind." Sullivan watched as Martinez walked toward the transparent opening in the craft's hull. She moved without hesitation, as if this moment had been planned and rehearsed countless times. "Before I go," she said, turning back toward Sullivan's aircraft, "I want you to know that everything I've done today has been to give humanity a choice. The technology exists to solve our greatest problems, but only if we're willing to abandon the secrecy and military applications that have defined its use for 70 years. She stepped through the transparent opening, which closed seamlessly behind her. The craft began to rise, carrying the woman who had changed human history toward whatever future awaited. Sullivan found himself alone in the sky above a desert that would never be the same. Around him, the other craft were beginning to move in new formations, some climbing toward space while others descended toward population centers around the world. His radio crackled with transmissions from every major news organization on Earth, all requesting interviews and statements about what he had witnessed. Military officials were demanding his immediate return to base, while international observers were requesting confirmation of the events they had monitored. But Sullivan found that he had only one response to all the demands and requests. "This is Captain Jake Sullivan, United States Air Force. Today I witnessed the disclosure of information that belongs to all humanity. What happens next will depend on whether we choose to treat this revelation as an opportunity for advancement or as a threat to be contained." He paused, looking down at the desert where it all began. "My father kept secrets that weren't his to keep. Today, those secrets end with me." Sullivan turned his F-16 toward Nellis Air Force Base, knowing that he would face court-martial, imprisonment, and the end of his military career. But he also knew that he had helped expose the truth about humanity's place in the universe. Behind him, the craft continued their coordinated ascent toward the stars, carrying with them the promise of technologies that could transform human civilization. Whether that transformation would be peaceful or chaotic would depend on choices that were no longer being made in secret government facilities, but in the full light of global attention. The age of secrets was over. The age of choice had begun. As Sullivan's F-16 disappeared toward the horizon, the last of the extraterrestrial craft completed their ascent, leaving behind a world that would wake up tomorrow to a completely different understanding of its place in the universe. The woman who had made it possible was now part of that larger story, carried by intelligence that had waited 70 years for humanity to be ready for the truth. On the ground below, the excavation site that had started it all lay empty except for the equipment Martinez had left behind. The briefcase containing 30 years of documentation sat where she had placed it, its contents already uploaded to servers around the world, ensuring that the truth she had died to reveal would never again be buried in the desert sand. The Warthog that had carried her on her final mission sat silent on the desert floor, its battle scars a testament to 3 decades of service to a truth that the world was finally ready to hear.